Let's begin with former Black Hawk pilot and senior director on military and political power at FDD, Brad Bowman, and founder of the National Security Institute and former associate counsel to President George W. Bush, Jamil Jaffer. Good to have both you gentlemen here on a night like this, especially. I'll begin with you, Jamil, because Russia reportedly helping Iran, China maybe as well. The White House insists it does not matter because the U.S. has obliterated Iran's capabilities. Should that matter? Are they wrong?
Well, of course it should matter. I mean, we know that Russia and Iran have a close relationship. We saw Russian generals on the ground in Iranian generals on the ground in Ukraine helping Russia with their drones, helping them build those Shahed drones that they're now using against our allies in the region. So we know they've had a close relationship. We know that Russia has long provided weapons to Iran as well. So it's no surprise they're now providing intelligence. The right response from the president wouldn't be to ignore it or avoid it. You'd be like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to provide intelligence and weapons to Ukrainians to kill Russian troops on the ground in Ukraine. Of course, the president can't do that because he's walked away from that months ago.
Well, let me ask you, Brad, because the defense secretary, you heard him say that no one's putting us in danger. We're putting the other guys in danger. Seems a little bit nearsighted, given that you've got the intelligence report saying and suggesting that there are images, there's intel of American troops being provided by Russia. That is a dangerous and precarious situation for our troops.
It's a serious development. At our think tank, we've been studying how China, Russia, Iran, North Korea have been cooperating for over 20 months now. And we've identified over 600 instances of cooperation. And sadly, what we're seeing between Russia and Iran is not new. In 2023, let's remember, Russia and Iran worked together to target U.S. troops in Syria. And then in 2024, again, Russia provided intelligence through Iran to the Houthis to target shipping in the Red Sea. So this is not new, and I would have preferred the president to warn Russia not to do this or to face serious consequences.
Will that fall on deaf ears? We're talking about Russia?
Well, it's hard to know, right? We don't know what the president will do. We've seen at times him get spicy with Vladimir Putin when Vladimir Putin didn't back off on Ukraine. But in truth, in the long run, the president hasn't really pushed back. He hasn't really done anything in Ukraine. And I worry he won't, like Brad does, I think, they won't do anything here. But China's it's a big problem as well. They have long been supplying the Iranians with weapons. When the Israelis took out a significant portion of their ballistic missile engine capability, we saw China come in and start to deliver that. Now, luckily, there was interdiction that happened along the way before it got to Iran. But it's no surprise they're trying to do that. They might do that. And the question is then, what is the U.S. going to do about it? President Trump is going to Beijing. He's trying to do a deal with President Xi. Is he going to put the pressure on Xi to not do this and really shut down this Iran, Russia, China, and, to Brad's point, North Korea pipeline? It's been going on for a long time.
Well, the Treasury Department is looking to ease the rising price of oil. Secretary Bessent, well, he has this idea.
We may unsanction other Russian oil. You know, the other thing Treasury can do here, Larry, is there are hundreds of millions of barrels of sanctioned crude on the water, and in essence, by unsanctioning them, Treasury can create supply.
Does this make sense at a time when Russia is helping Iran?
It makes zero sense. When Russia and Iran are able to sell oil to China, money goes the opposite direction, obviously. What does Putin use that money for? He uses that money to continue this war of conquest in Ukraine where they're murdering Ukrainian men, women, and children. And Iran uses that money to oppress the Iranian people, advance their nuclear weapon program, advance their ballistic missile program, and support terrorism. So this is a bad idea, and we should be doing the opposite, doing everything we can to stop the flow of oil out of Russia and Iran so they don't get the money coming back that they're using for clearly bad purposes.
Seems so obvious. Why is it not instructive?
Well, I'm not sure, but the real answer is let's produce more American oil, right? If we're worried about the flood of Russian oil that might be needed to reduce prices, or with our friends in Saudi Arabia and other parts of the Middle East that are being attacked by Iran right now, to produce more oil. And the interesting thing about what Brad said is it's not just being used to fund Russian troops in Ukraine. It's apparently now being used to fund Russian intelligence going to Iran in the very war we're fighting. It's crazy.
Well, what might seem crazy to people as well are these two new conditions, one about unconditional surrender and the other about promising total immunity to Iranian military officials if they step down. And the question, of course, is how could the President of the United States grant full immunity without jurisdiction, number one? What does that look like? And also, I mean, is it achievable for the U.S. troops who are on the ground or a special mission to have an unconditional surrender?
I would just say on the ballistic missile threat, you mentioned that as one of the focuses of our military strategy. We have seen a 90% reduction between day 1 and day 7 in Iranian ballistic missile strikes. We've also seen an 83% reduction in drone attacks between day 1 and day 7. So we're making real progress there. and also we've sunk or damaged about 43 of their naval vessels. But at the same time, the questions of regime change is a whole other ball of wax, and it's my view that putting American troops on the ground in Iran would be an absolute disaster. And a quick comment on the unconditional surrender thing, if I may. I understand that the president is trying to cast a shadow power over the bargaining table to see if he can get a big deal, but I'm not sure it's really helpful for the president of the United States to be cosplaying Douglas MacArthur here. You know, as someone who served in the U.S. military, I'd rather we just let our military do the acting and save the bombast for something else.
Is it even, I mean, when you say unconditional surrender, the larger point he's making as well, is that what would that look like? How would that actually play out?
I mean, it's hard to imagine the Basij, the Iranian secret police, or the Iranian Revolutionary Guards, or their Quds Force even, engaging in unconditional surrender. More likely, they're likely to melt into the background and conduct, if we did replace the government, which is going to be very hard to do without boots on the ground. And to Brad's point, I think the president understands, and I think everyone thinks it would be a disaster, special forces or otherwise. But we'll see how this plays out. But the real answer is, no, they're not going to engage in unconditional surrender. They're going to melt into the background, and they're going to conduct a insurgent campaign like we saw in Iraq, except in a much more aggressive way, because this is an even more capable, even more professionally trained military.
So why not rule it out? I mean, if it sounds completely unfeasible, why? Why have it as a condition, or is it sometimes pretextual? The whole point is not to be able to achieve it.
I would advise the president not to put ground troops in Iran for all kinds of reasons we can discuss. But I wouldn't necessarily suggest he rule it out, because you want them to be fearful of things, even if you're not going to do them, to be honest with you.
Because you're saying unconditional surrender would require troops to be there?
On the question of ground troops. But I totally agree with your point, is that, you know, if we don't have to guess about the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. I mean, the IRGC Quds Force, they were responsible for killing over 600 American service members in Iraq. They developed these explosively formed penetrators. They smuggled them into Iraq, specifically designed to penetrate our armor vehicles, and more than 600 U.S. service members did not come home as a result. They're stone-cold killers. They're armed. The Iranian people are oppressive. They're educated, and they're unarmed. We don't have to guess what the IRGC is going to do. They are going to murder Iranians by the thousands if they rise up, as the president said, and we don't have to guess because they did that. From December to January, the president said, come out and protest. They did, the president warned them. And the regime shrugged and then murdered more than 30,000 of them. So that's who we're dealing with here, and we need to be clear-eyed about it.
Evidence compiled by CNN of an elementary school strike, which killed at least 168 children on just this past Saturday. It suggests the United States is likely responsible, and Secretary Hegseth has said that the Pentagon is investigating the incident. Does it sound like there was bad intelligence in terms of the target location?
Look, we know that school used to be on a military base. It's right next to a military base. There was a wall that was built recently, but that facility is only about 600 yards from valid military targets. Mistakes happen in war. Now, nobody's going to forgive the loss of 168 children. It's obviously terrible. Mistakes happen, intelligence errors happen, bombs fall in the wrong places. We saw a friendly fire incident just this past week where a Kuwaiti F-18 shot down 3 American F-15 fighters. Of course, those 6 pilots survived. They were able to parachute out. But friendly fire and mistakes happen on the battlefield. It's a horrible tragedy. Nobody should forgive it. At the same time, the reality is that these things happen.
Laura, I would just say it's heartbreaking. I mean, these are students and teachers that are not going to return home to their families. These are empty chairs at kitchen tables. This is horrible. But I would just say that, you know, the CENTCOM, U.S. Central Command, is doing an investigation. Let's see how that turns out. If the United States was responsible for this accidental strike, then we should make it right. We should own it. We should try to provide restitution to the families, learn what happened, make sure it never happens again. But I would just end with this. Let's be careful not to confuse a military like ours that does everything in our power to avoid things like this and then owns it when we make the mistake versus the world's worst state sponsor of terrorism that deliberately targets civilians and supports things like what we saw on October 7th.
No ambiguity there. Thank you both.